this time. Things happen. But it's a beautiful Friday morning in St. Kitts, but it's so hot. I don't know if everybody feels the same way like I feel. It's one of the greenest summers that I've seen so far, but it's one of the hottest that I've experienced in a long time. It's extremely hot, but it's really, really beautiful. For those of you who likes to swim, just go to the ocean and take a dip. It's absolutely gorgeous. You can see every single thing at the bottom of the ocean. It is really, really good. My name is Sandra Quilly-Atherton, and usually I'm the host for Your Views. It's a program that you can call in and you can share, just like I said, your views, your opinion. Sometimes we do that. Next time we have people who would call in, I have as guests on my show, and they would talk about things that affects us here in St. Kitts, the world on a whole, and how we can come up with good solutions so that the people who are in government or who have the ability to make changes would understand what the people are feeling and try to make some adjustments. We realize that happens a lot. When you say certain things, the government listens, and then they would make certain adjustments, and everybody is satisfied. But let us say this, though. I don't think any government can please everybody. The government try their best to do what they can. Sometimes, of course, you look at the performance of some of people who are in government and you realize that they can do much better. We see that now, where I am so surprised. I can't seem to understand where our government is finding that money from. He has to tell me a little more about fiscal prudency, because we must say kudos to the government, because they have gone beyond the call of duties. And the only problem I have is that they listen to everybody and they want to answer every beck and call. That is a problem I have. The government cannot individually support everybody. We have to understand that too, and recognize that they have certain responsibilities, and that come first and foremost. But I can't seem to understand people saying that there's no work in St. Kitts. I said I've been advertising for the longest while, looking for somebody to work for me, but everybody's working. But yet still we hear people, maybe it's the poverty alleviation program, or maybe it's the STEP program, but it seems to everybody's employed. Another area I see of great interest is the construction area. I think that we have a construction boom right now here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Well, I'm not sure. Yeah, Nevis too. It's just construction. So I can see why people are not grumbling as they should, or they used to, because we have a lot of stuff happening here, and I think people are quite comfortable under the circumstances that we are faced with COVID, recognizing that COVID is wreaking havoc in the entire world. I see big countries, areas that we thought that could have withstand things like this, and they have been brought to their knees. So we have to be grateful that in the small islands like St. Kitts and Nevis, we are still standing tall. Our cases are not minimal anymore. It's rising based on what we are accustomed to have. It's rising, so it shows that people are not doing what they're supposed to do. We says before, it worked before. We had 45 cases when we were just observing natural hygiene protocols, where you was hand sanitizing, wearing face masks, and social distancing. So the fact that the cases are rising, of course, we have opened our borders somewhat. People are coming in, but most of the cases that we're having now is community spread. We are so lucky that we are the NEOC. The able people that they have there are able to stop cases from coming inside. The early detection has worked for us full time. Kudos to them. They have been doing a great job. We cannot be ungrateful. Thanks to them, while we are in a situation like this. I mean, you can't stop COVID from coming in. We can't stop people from transmitting, because people are not doing what they're supposed to do. But this morning I have with me a guest. I think we have her online. Oh, no, we don't have her online yet, so we could continue to talk about situations and what we can do. CPL is here. I think it's next week. It's the start. The game starts next week. Trent, I think the game starts on the 26th, and we know that these are super spreaders. When we have celebrations or areas where you have mass people coming together. We have issues. These are people. These are the times when COVID spread. So we have to take these things into consideration. And please wear your mask, social distance as much as you can. I know the party stand doesn't understand that. When people are intoxicated, they just let everything go, and we have to realize that at the end of the day, my mother used to say, we laugh, be cry, be. Sometimes we have to take these things into consideration that, we have to be responsible. We have to play our part in order to control the spread of COVID-19. So we have been doing a great job. I must say that to our citizens. You have been doing a great job. There are times people have to work, people have to do things. It's getting accustomed to a new way of life. For me, life has changed drastically, and not just changed drastically, it has changed so quickly. And I suppose because of that, we can't seem to we had little time to prepare, and so making adjustments are quite difficult. We know now that the government have brought in Pfizer. Pfizer is another form of vaccination. There's some people who are not comfortable with the AstraZeneca, some people who don't like the Moderna, and there's some people who like Pfizer. I don't know people's preferences, but it's good for us that we have preferences, we have options, and so vaccination is one of the areas that the claims say that we can go. The science, if you believe in the science, says that it helps to curb the spread of COVID-19. But one of the things that I'm going to say, though, because the science has always also said now, the Delta virus, the Delta variant, not the strain, the variant, because what happens is that they're smart. Viruses are very smart, and they would recognize when you're trying to control them, and then they would mutate into something else. So they're saying that the Delta variant, I am not a medical doctor, but I do read, I follow the science, I listen to all of the information that they have presented, and so I believe I'm in a position where I can talk based on what I've heard and based on what how I've analyzed it. So these are my words, and you can listen to Dr. Fauci, and he would say the same thing. What he have said is that the vaccinated and the unvaccinated has similar problems where the Delta is concerned. The antibodies are just about the same. So what he's trying to say is not because you're vaccinated, it means that you must throw caution to the wind, because we've seen that. We've seen England would have tried that, telling people not to wear. America tried that too, but now they're back to wearing masks because realize mask has done a lot in order to control. Social distancing has done a lot. That's what we were depending on before the vaccination came in. And hand sanitizing is another thing that we have depended on before the vaccination came in. And the statistics, if I am right where statistics are concerned, before the vaccination came, we were boasting 49 cases. All would have recovered after the vaccination came. I think people would have thrown caution to the wind, and now we're at 700 and something cases. We've seen it almost double the Nevis, moving from creepy crawly up to 22 last week. Now it's up to 44 in early this week. It was 22 and 44 in 1 day's time. So it shows how quickly the virus can spread. And so therefore we are asking everybody, and we understand that we would have had deaths. We see the complication of the virus, and there's somewhere that I would have read that there are long-term effects from COVID. So if you would have contracted the virus and you would have gotten over it, it's not like to say that I would have gotten over it, but there are some other issues that you can develop in the future. Also, there's a term that they call long COVID, where you have the virus for a very long time. So people have said, based on some testimonials that I would have read, that people would have had COVID for almost a year. You're reinfected, and then it's every time you have the reinfection. So, we have to be very careful, not looking at it that you can recover, but then there are long-term effects from COVID-19. Now I have my guests online. Good morning, Miss Danielle, Honorable Soon-to-be, I hope. How are you this morning?
I am fine, thank you. And how about you?
I am great, I'm always great. That's one of the things. I look at life and what it has to offer, and I accept it because there's certain things I can change and there are others that I can't change. And most of the time, I don't try to change anything. So that's what it is. So how's
Well,
Nevis?
that's a good outlook. Nevis is a bit overcast right now, a little bit windy, where I am.
Mm-hmm.
But the forecast says no rain, so I'll see how true that is. But the sun is peeking through, so
Yeah.
there's a bit of sunshine and a bit hazy.
Yeah.
With the things a bit hazy.
Did he say it was going to be hazy today, the forecast?
Actually, I didn't check to see if he said it was going to be hazy today.
But you know there
but
was
it
going
is
to be.
hazy today.
Yeah, okay, well, good. So, I recognize that Nevis is really, and I always worry about when cases start to rise in small islands like us, and you know, and I'm realizing that you're now looking at 44 cases of COVID-19.
Yes, well, 44 in total. Some would have
Recovered?
recovered. But yes, it is something to be of concern based on our, infrastructure, hospital capacity, and that sort of thing. What we do try to encourage, because we realize that COVID-19, it's here, it's going to be here for a long time. And so we have to try to figure out what is the best way to manage the pandemic and to, protect and save lives from the very serious impacts or effects of it. And so we understand and we know that there is some hesitancy still with the vaccine. And,
We would have lost her, I think, and we tried to get her back. Yeah, just like she said, the people who are hesitating on whether or not they should take the vaccine. And for me, I always say everybody have a choice. Heavenly Father, in all his glory and his wisdom, as almighty as he is, would have given human beings that choice. And I am going to tell you now that I don't believe that anything should be forced on anybody. Everybody's supposed to have a right to make that decision. And those who are not making decision should understand too that if you're not making the decision to do what you're asked to do, then you have to suffer consequences. And that's what life is all about. So if you say you're not going to take it and other people feel like they're threatened by you, then definitely you can't be in their space. So you have to create your own space. And that's what it is. If you want to take, if you're going to take it, then you can operate a certain way. If I'm working for somebody and they said that that's one of the one of the requirements, and you feel like you don't want to do it, then you just have to seek employment otherwise. Fear is only fair, and that is for me is what life is. But I do not think that people should be forced into doing things. But those of you who don't want to be forced into doing anything, remember that the job belongs to people, and they also have their rights. So you have your right, and they have the rights, and these are the things that we have to seriously understand. It's a sad situation. It's the position the world has found itself in, and those of you who can survive without it in your own space, in your own environment that you would create, then feel free to do so. But if you're operating in other people's space, understand too that they have a right to do what they want to do. And we would all be happy if I would respect your rights, and you would respect my rights. And that's how the world is. It's so unfair, but it is the reality. Is she back on yet, Trent? Janice, are you there? Okay, he's still trying to get her back. We would have lost her. But there's so much things we can talk about. We know that she said they have had cases, and we have to realize that too. That although people are recovering from COVID, people are still complaining about the body pains that the breathing difficulties that you're still having. Those are the after effects, not side effects. Those are the effects caused by COVID-19. Janice, you're back.
yes, I am.
Okay, cool. And you were saying?
Yes, I was saying one of the things we have to recognize is that we are living in the COVID-19 era, and we must find ways to be able to coexist and to manage the pandemic as best we can. And so understanding that vaccinated or not, the wearing of mask is critical. And so I actually like the fact that the mask wearing remains a constant throughout. We started to see a bit of concern with regards to people stereotyping others. But as it is right now, the variants are changing. Nobody knows exactly what variant may come about next, and so the best precaution is to ensure that you have that mask. That would be like, added security. So, and the hand sanitizing and the social distancing, etc. Because the thing is, we cannot see we cannot see the virus, and so you just have to operate as if it is wherever you are, and try your best to ensure that you protect yourself, and once you protect yourself, then that will help to protect others as well.
We've seen some of the benefits of mask wearing because we realize lots of people haven't come down with that common cold that we normally have. The flu season wasn't really that flu season. We haven't had much, or maybe because we didn't have Truvian, so we couldn't give it a name. But we have seen the benefits of mask wearing, not just where COVID is concerned, but otherwise. Well, that COVID is
yeah. One of the things I say as well is that with the reduction in the arrivals, the tourist arrivals, because a lot of times the flu would come down, from the colder climate and that sort of thing. So that I think would contribute to us not seeing as much of the flu as we would have ordinarily seen.
Okay, so there's the good and there's the bad and there's the ugly. You see, the benefits. It's what happens when you have situations like this. It's a pandemic. We have to understand that the whole world is affected by this. Everybody is suffering, and I'm seeing Nevis is preparing for a next general election just right around the corner. You will have at least 24, 12 months.
Well,
how long will that be for?
The next general election is constitutionally due December 2022, which is next December. However, based on how the Constitution is set up, the ruling party can call it at any time that they, think it would be in their best interest, I guess. So while it's due December 2022, it could happen before the end of this year, if the ruling party decides that is what they would want to do. And so, being in opposition, we have to be ready. We have to try to do as much as we can, and not procrastinate and think that we have time, because you just never know when the bell is going to be rung and when we have to get to the polls. So that's why it's some things that we're doing. My launch, for example, is going to be tomorrow. We do have strict protocols to be enforced as recommended or as required by the task force. But we know what the situation is today. We do not know what it may be next week or the week after. And so sometimes you may be waiting to get a better situation. You just don't know. You may end up getting a worse situation. So, it's a bit of a risk assessment as to how best to navigate through the entire COVID-19 pandemic situation.
Yeah, it's what it is. It's just, like I said, we should be starting to get accustomed to it, because it's been around now for over a year, over a year actually. We've been locked down, opened up, crying, people have been affected, scared, everything, fear, and everything has been calculated in this. We have all experienced all of that. So I think we are in a better position now than we were, not having an understanding of what the virus was, what could happen. That's fear, that fear factor is not as as high as it used to be. So those are the things that we have to look at. And you're being launched, you said. That's one of the reasons why I have you. I want and you're going to be in the St. James area?
Correct, yes.
Why St. James, though?
Why St. James? St. James is my home.
Okay, that's your home. So people know you there, and you feel like it's an area that you can best represent.
Well, yeah, I've been living in St. James for just about 20 years. I love the environment here in St. James. It's as a coastal village. It's a fishing village, and I am someone who is very much attracted to the ocean and, the benefits of being close to the ocean. And so I would have been here for a while. I have interacted with the community, and I just could not see myself, running in an area where I do not live. I mean, I live here, and so for the good or the bad, I have to be able to understand and feel what is happening in the immediate area that I'm a part of. And so I feel based on my experiences in the area, based on the path that I would take with regards to redevelopment of the area. I think St. James is the constituency that is best aligned with my skill sets and expertise and the things that I can do with regards to community building and economy building and that sort of thing.
Well, I'm a St. James myself. I was born in Newcastle, raised for a while. That's my hometown. That's where I live. That's where my counted old people, my navel string was buried, and I'm proud St. James. One of the things that we were known for is that good community spirit that we always had. We were very close knit. Everybody was one big family in St. James's, Newcastle to be exact. It's the area of Nevis. Everybody's going to say the area is the same, but Newcastle, St. James area, Mount Lily, Fountain, because you go to school and you socialize with all of these people from the different area, Camps, Butlers, Bricklin. Like I said, it sounds like a vast area, but it's a very, very small, close-knit family. Everybody's related, and we always look for good representation there in the St. James area, because sometimes we feel like it's an area that has been forgotten. And presently, people think that Alexis is doing a great job, so I think that you're up against some competition. I suppose you'll be able to see some areas that...
Who were you having that conversation with?
Oh, I'm having it with myself, maybe, because I'm just saying what I think people might be saying, that Alexis is doing a great job. People would tend, and all of the politicians feel like they're doing what they're supposed to do. But what do you think? Because you're in the area, you should still neglect. You should understand the areas of that has not been paid attention to. Talk about the airport, for example. We not see much happening there. I don't know how soon things are going to happen there. And there are other areas that you can point out. But his hands are full. He's into agriculture, the new norm, the area that people have to start to develop so that we can become self-sufficient where food is concerned, food security. So that's a big area that he has to handle. And so maybe that's an excuse that he can give.
Well, maybe it's an excuse, definitely not a reason, because we know St. James has been an area for agricultural activity for a long time.
Livestock farming was one of our things.
You know where Madams is. But what we have been seeing is that, prime agricultural lands have been used for other purposes. And that is something that I think in the long run is going to be very harmful to the area. And so we must be able to prioritize our agricultural lands. They're that way because, over the many years when you would have been raising, cattle, etc., and you develop that sort of nutrient-rich type of soil, it's much easier to maintain what you have naturally than to try to use fertilizers and other artificial means to create agricultural lands. And so that is something that we have been seeing where agricultural lands are being converted for housing and that sort of thing. And there's nothing wrong with housing, but you just must have an understanding of what your natural resources are and how best you can capitalize on them. And so while that is an area, we must recognize that we're looking at the constituency of St. James, and while there may be agricultural activity going on in different parts of the island and different parts of the country, you still have to look at how are you impacting your constituents. And these are the things that I think we would have to look at. The fact that he has a full-time portfolio in St. Kitts as well as a full-time portfolio in Nevis definitely would take away from his ability to be able to be as attentive and responsive to the needs of the constituency. And I've been going through the community. I've been speaking with persons, and there's some things that you can point to with regards to what is a requirement of the government to do in regards to its responsibilities. But what is lacking is the creation of new industries and new employment opportunities in this area, because at the end of the day, everybody would want to be able to be gainfully employed. People who do not necessarily want to be trying to, have 2 and 3 and 4 jobs, and then, the family suffers and your quality of life is diminished. And so creating industries where you can have people gainfully employed and, live a decent standard of life is very important. And so even some of the houses that I just spoke about, yes, everybody's excited when they, get their own home, because Nevisians, we're very much into independence and wanting our own. But what we have to understand is that on the flip side of that, you must be able to meet your monthly obligations. So it ought not be just a matter where, someone can provide you with a home. That, a representative should be able to help you to have gainful employment, so that then you can then take care of it, and you can at least have a peaceful and restful.
Okay, we lost. I don't know why we're losing Janice. I don't know why it's constantly dropping out, but we would have lost her. One of the things, and I'm listening to her, and it is such a difference and I like the fact that women are getting involved in politics, because it's such a softer side to what we're accustomed to. It's about talking about issues and debating issues, recognizing problems and seeing how you're going to deal with the problems. This is what I am enjoying right now. It is such a difference to when you interview the male part of, and it's nature. The man is supposed to be the aggressive side of the two beings. They're the aggressors, and the women are supposed to be the fairer side and the softer side. But what I'm enjoying about listening to Miss Daniel is the way she's addressing the situation, that it's something that you're not so accustomed to. I don't know if people who are listening can understand what I'm saying. She's soft, but she comes off so genuine and so understanding and so knowledgeable of what is really going on. And these are the areas that I think politicians, always been saying that politicians have to start paying attention to the issues. Not, she has her opponent, or that's the person who she's coming up against, but that's not her worry. And that's what I like about it. Normally politicians, have we seen that over the years, where you try to define the person who you're running with, and not looking at the issues that the people who you want to represent has. That's what I like, what I'm hearing now. It's about the issues that she's dealing with, and not her opponent. That's the least. She would have made her statement, of course, that you can't have 2 full-time jobs and perform equally, and that's what she would have said, and because that would have an effect on the people who you represent. Is she back yet? Not yet. And that would have an effect on the people who you represent. And I'm sitting down and I'm listening to her, and I feel like we are getting there. We are getting there as a people. We are now understanding the fact that they would get up and they would start to run. Well, it depends on what the people say or they decide at the polls. But what I'm hearing here now, it's something of a difference. A person who really have looked at the situation, who understand the situation, understand what the people who she's going to represent needs. Because why would you ask people to vote for you when you can't tell them what you're going to do for them? And that is why I'm so intrigued. I'm so much, Janice, I'm talking about you. The conversation that we're having, I'm really, I'm impressed. That is, if I must, for a better word, I am impressed. Because we don't normally see this in politicians who are vying for office. It's about them getting in first, and then they're going to see what they can do. It's a total opposite, where you are saying the areas that you would have identified and recognizing where the people who you're going to represent, the areas that they would have problems with, and it's about a better life. So you have heard, not have heard, but you've seen the areas of negligence, and you think that you're in a position where you can do better.
Well, yes, and I think that's actually the reason why I am, involved in politics right now, because, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I did not really see politics in my, in my life plan. But just recognizing that, so much can be done, but it's not being done. Mm-hmm. And you ask, the question, why? And so I am on this journey right now, and it's really about recognizing that there are needs that can be met if one has the right purpose and if one is in a position to really listen to the people and understand what are their priorities right now. And so, I like I said, I would have been around the communities for quite some time. And, I'm asking myself, how come this is not done? And how come that is not done? And I think it's just a matter of priorities for individuals. And I think, more recently, it's a matter of having the time. Because at the end of the day, there's only so much that someone can do in 24 hours. And, representing a constituency, I think, is a full-time job. In fact, more than a full-time job. And so having to represent, in two different parliaments, I think it would definitely take away from your ability to represent in any one area as well as you ought to. And so it's seeing people and hearing. And, I am someone who I would look at a need. I'm not someone who is partisan. I recognize that there's a community need, so to say, and I will try to fill that need regardless of who is involved and that sort of thing. So it's not a matter of, as we're seeing now, sometimes if you're not on my party, then, too bad for you. I don't look at things that way. I look at the whole picture, and I look at a need that is required, and then I try to address it. And so, as we say over here, blue would benefit, green would benefit, but it's just a matter of, the electorate understanding who is better positioned to deliver on the needs that they have and to give that person the opportunity to do so.
But you know what, though, Janice? We as the electorate have been fooled so many times over. But, and we could take the stance of that everybody said the same thing. One of the things that I have looked at over the years, and you listen to a lot of politicians speak about, not about what they can do, or because a lot of times they can't tell you what is there to be done. So, and if you listen about what they're going to do, if you can analyze well, you can see whether this person is genuine or that person is just trying to get into office to look after themselves. And most of the times you see that in a lot of the politicians, is that they ask us, the electorate, to vote for them, and then after they get in, we are back on the back burner again, and then another year before election, then they surface again, and they come with the same empty promises, and always come with an excuse why they couldn't do what they're supposed to do. And that's what I say. I like what you were saying, because you are vying. I understand that you're vying for the position. The fact that you said you're not partisan, we see that people. Sorry. We see that it's changing a lot here in St. Kitts, though, where I am so proud of everybody, not everybody, but it's a situation where it doesn't matter who you are, and you can call and you can get assistance. And I'm seeing that, and I'm not being biased, and it's not about party politics either, but I'm seeing it happening now. And I hope, and I've said that, I hope this is a new era where politicians are going to take that into consideration, that representation is not about you representing people who voted for you only, but for the constituency that you ran for. Because if you do well, because you have to remember, like I said, we have been fooled over the years. If you do well for your first term, then you wouldn't have to campaign for the second term because people will now understand that you're a genuine person. And that is
I
what,
would beg to differ. I would beg to differ.
okay.
Because I can always recall one of the things that I thought about when I contemplated getting involved in politics was when my father, when he ran the Four Seasons, which he was, quite instrumental in getting into Nevis. For the first time, persons had, good paying jobs, and it really changed the economy of Nevis. And, the Four Seasons opened in 1991, and he was out of office in 1992, voted out. And so all of the things that he would have, spearheaded and helped to bring about to improve the lives of persons, um, it appears that did not really factor when people went to the polls. And so I think once you are in a position where you could contribute and you do the best that you can, and you want to continue, then you have to, continue showing people how you can continue to contribute to them. So I I would have looked at that situation. Everybody really thought that he was going to, win his seat. But then, I guess the other side has different plans and different strategies.
But again,
Where,
sorry, again, but you have to look at the fact people always, and I don't know why they always say this though, oh, you've been in there for too long. It's time for us to change you. And people change because somebody, not that they're doing badly, but because they've been in there for too long. They've been in office for too long. So sometimes these can be contributing factors. It's the mind of the electorate, and again, maybe it might have been a build up from before. Maybe the Four Seasons wasn't the only thing that they wanted to see happen, and they felt that he wasn't delivering on other ends. We don't know.
well, I think around that time is when we really started to see the overseas voters coming in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think on the ground he would have been returned to office. But once the overseas voters started coming in, I think that had a big part to play in him losing that election. But and so that brings up the next topic about overseas voters or resident voters. But at the end of the day, I mean, my position is that I will try my best to explain the plans that I have for St. James's, and hopefully they would resonate with persons based on my background, based on work that I have done in the community before. Excuse me. I am hoping that it would be sufficient for persons to understand that I can deliver. I understand the needs. It's not about me per se. I'm comfortable as I am. But it's really, you feel compassion and empathy, and you see people, really would like to be able to pay their bills. You see people struggling to get their children to school, to buy school lunches and stuff like that. And, how can you really help on a much larger scale, but, trying to get in where you could put necessary policies in place. For example, if a parent cannot afford a school lunch program, then that parent should not necessarily have to feel that, ashamed or embarrassed. That, I mean, we have all sections, all rungs of the ladder in terms of capabilities, etc. And so if a parent can demonstrate that they are not in a position, they're not working, then, that child should be able to eat. And one of the things I realized here in Nevis is that people would look at your home, and maybe at one point in time you're doing very well, and you're able to build yourself a nice home, but you still have a mortgage to pay. And people say, well, oh, you live in a nice big house, so you don't need any assistance. And us as Nevisians, we're very proud people, and so sometimes children would actually stay home from school because the parent is not in a position to give them the $5 for lunch on that day. And so, things need to be put in place to look out for everybody, regardless of where you may have been. It's about where you are now and and what kind of assistance you may need to, even get you over a hump or to bridge a gap. And so those are the things that, we would need to look at and ensure that nobody is left behind
Yep.
when they are not. Yeah.
And I can tell you, there's some areas of I've always just like, not like you because you just started, but I've always had a very keen interest in politics, and I've always felt that we politicians can do much better. Yeah, it's everybody going, not everybody, because I wouldn't do that though. When you get into office, it's about you, and you see that. You see politicians get in, they couldn't afford to pay their bills, and as soon as they get in, they buy the best car or they buy the biggest house, and you ask yourself the same question because you understand the salaries that ministers operate on, but yet still you look at the mass wealth that they would have accumulated in the short space of time that they've been in there. And you're the ones who have worked so hard trying to get them in, then you still have to be running behind and begging. It's about creating an environment where we are not beggars, and politicians do that a lot, where you have to always hold on, hoping that one of these days you're going to get a chance. Promises that have been given. There's situation and I'm glad that you're going to run for St. James area, and this is an area that I want you to start looking at. I have an auntie there, I'm not going to call her name, but for the longest while, she lives alone, and her children, people always look, oh, her children could afford. It's not the children. She lives alone. She has to pay her bills like everything else. She's not employed. She's 80 years old, and she's been seeking assistance, and that's what Social Security is there for, non-contributory pension, and she has been totally neglected. I've been asking, and promises have been made. People are looking at the fact that, oh, yes, if there's a child living there and the child is unemployed, the government has the poverty alleviation program where if you in a household and you're making less than $3,000, then you can apply for at least the 500. I don't know what Nevis has a situation where it's either the 500 or otherwise they would give you some other relief. But people are parents have to look after themselves. Whether or not you have children, does not say me children, and they have children have their life. But if it is good for, we have lost again. But what I'm going to continue to say, if you recognize that there's a situation where everybody, if the law states that this is the situation, everybody should be taken into consideration. And those are the areas that I find that when politicians, they make all of the promises to you, but when they get into office, you are still the same way. They still keep you in a position where you are so dependent on them, and that you're still hoping that even if you don't get it in this term, you might be able to get it in next term. I think that is something that has to be done away with because it's just not fair. When we, as the electorate, elect politicians, it's not for us to be begging them. It's for them to create environments that we don't have to beg anymore, that we can become self-sufficient. But these are the areas that we are seriously lacking, and I think that is one of the reasons why I said that we have been fooled so many times by politicians, and so we are very wary sometimes, and sometimes it is sad because we overlook the new ones that are coming in. They can help, but because that we've been fooled for so long, we missed out on opportunity putting the right people in position because we think they're going to do the same thing. Janice, you're back.
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'm talking about the St. James area situation. My auntie, she's been for the longest while trying to get some help. We haven't had it. It's something I wasn't going to talk about, but because we're having the discussion now, I think that it is something that is necessary. Now the children are going to say, oh no, my mother is not begging. No, she's not begging, but I think that the government can offer some assistance there and stop looking at where children are positioned. Children are not obligated to look after their parents. We've seen that. They're children who have their own lives and they're struggling the same way. But if government has a program in place, everybody should be given a chance to benefit from it, and not just supporters and you support because nobody know who you vote for, but they feel like your children are in a position to help, and so we don't have to help you.
Well, that's one of the areas that I recognize. There's a gap that needs to be filled, and there are not enough standardized procedures, and there's quite a bit of discretionary, decisions to be made. And so the more that you can have things standardized, where even if you just have a checkbox and you check, are you this age? Do you live by this? What is your income? And everybody who checks certain boxes, you're eligible for certain things, and if you don't, then you're not eligible. But once people are able to make these subjective assessments, then that is where the politics gets a chance to creep in. And for however it falls out, one of the key things that I recognize that we need to do, especially here in the NIE, is to have standardized policies across, a broad range of services that are provided, goods that are procured. These things need to be standardized, and standardized because everybody should have an equal opportunity to participate in whatever the program is. And if it's not standardized, then you run the risk of one set of people getting everything and another set getting nothing at all.
Very good.
And that's not the type of policy that I would want to be a part of.
And you see, that's why I said earlier, they're politicians without a plan. And that's why you sound so different. And I'm really admiring the things that you're saying. Politics is not a difficult, politicians, they don't really have a hard time. Their job is not so difficult. If you come with a plan, having an understanding that their legislation, their conditions and their regulations, and people meet certain criterions, their criterions for certain privileges that government would have been offering to its people. And if we would work along that, it matters not who you are, green, blue, orange, red, it doesn't matter who you are, providing you meet the criterion, then you are eligible. And that's how it's supposed to be. It's not about party politics and who supported you. If you want to get people to support you later on, then you have to look at everybody, not just your supporters.
Yeah, well, those are some of the things that I have recognized are lacking and leads more to this kind of divisive environment and, who gets and who doesn't get and that sort of thing. And, I mean, my thing is really to try to give everybody the equal opportunity to participate across the board. Because at the end of the day, I mean, you're not going to be able, you would not know who voted for you. You're not supposed to know who voted for you or who didn't vote for you. And if you just start off with that understanding, then you should not be discriminating.
Thank
you. You could have some very vocal people who telling you that they voted for you once you win, but really and truly, maybe they didn't. And vice versa. So that's where now you need to ensure that whatever you're doing is standardized and can impact everybody in an equal way.
Let's talk about your launch. We're running out of time. What do you hope to see? I know you have your plans. What information that you have already to give out? What do you expect from the people of St. James?
Well, right now we're operating in the COVID-19 environment, and so I am not necessarily expecting to see a bumper crowd, as people say, because we are required to, maintain social distancing, etc. And so we have a limited amount of persons based on the task force requirements that will be there. However, we will be streaming live on One Radio, Freedom Radio, and the NRP Facebook page, Vision 2020. So persons can, stay at home or overseas and participate. It's going to be a very compact program. Of course, we have the curfew at 10 p.m. However, we have a program that goes online from 7 p.m. 7 p.m. sharp. And so between 6 and 6:30, people would be admitted. Everybody must wear your mask. You must be sanitized. You must record your name and contact information. And once you're in, we would ensure that you maintain the social distancing that is required. I intend to speak, briefly as the leader of NRP, but more so as the candidate for St. James's. And so I am hoping to be able to explain to the people of St. James's who are present and who, virtual or physical, and explain to them some of the ideas and some of the plans that I would have for the constituency and, ask for their support. Now, it's an interesting scenario in politics where on one hand, you're told to not give out all of your ideas because the other side may steal them. But
Oh.
I have been having some conversations with people in the constituency, and a number of them would have indicated to me that St. James is not an easy seat to win.
Mhm.
But the people are not foolish, and so they would encourage me to come out and let them know, some of the things, if not all. Of course, I'm not going to say all, but at least some of the things that I would like to see in the constituency that could bring about some employment opportunities and to make life a bit easier for the people of St. James's. So I'm hoping to do that and, just pretty much have a good evening and share some ideas and get some feedback from the people and see, where it goes from there.
See
I'm
what?
quite happy that I've been around, and so some of the things that I will be speaking to are based on conversations that I would have had with members of the community in terms of what they would like to see.
Mhm.
It's a like I said, a compact program, and so I'm not going to be able to provide all of the ideas in a short period of time or expand upon, but at least once they have an idea, then I always go back and do house to house and provide more details, in that type of setting.
Yeah, and I don't understand why politicians want to hold back. But it's your idea, and if it's an idea that is going to benefit the constituency, I don't see why you can't put it out. It doesn't matter who would have done it in the end. It's so that people can benefit from it. But I see politicians do that as some that's some of their tactics that they use. But if you have a genuine interest in the people of constituency, your constituency, that's the St. James's area, then put it out there. If it can benefit them, it matters not who do it. But at the end of the day, they would know that you would have had ideas, and you could come up and recognize that your opponents they're basically bankrupt of ideas. So I don't. If I was to become a politician, I would say exactly what my plans are. If somebody wanted to put my plan into action, fine. At the end of the day, whether or not I'm in office, I want to make sure that my constituents are looked after. So if I have a plan that can help them, I'll put it out there. Yeah, and one of these days they would realize that it's not those who represent them that is interested in their affairs, but those who that they would have neglected in the end. And that's what politics is all about. It's about helping the people. It matters not who complete the task, but I like what you've said, Janice. I like I said, it's a different tone to what you're accustomed to when you're interviewing people who are vying for office or politicians. For me, it's always a lot of noise, and I always call them sounding brass and tinkling cymbals because that's what it is. It's just what it is. It just make a whole lot of noise, and when push come to shove, or when they're given the opportunity, they ask for another 5 years because they didn't get a chance to look after you because they were very busy looking after themselves, and that's exactly how I feel. But I know that politics is not something that you depend on. You would have made yourself, and you're quite comfortable that you would have made alluded to that. And it's just because you've seen areas of neglect and areas in which you can help the people of St. James's. And I do wish that people take these things into consideration and may the best representative win at the polls. And that's where I hope that your message resonates in the minds of people of St. James's, and they can look and see and understand some of the areas that of interest that you're looking at, and see whether or not you'll be the person who can complete the task and make them the happy St. Jamesers that they want to be, because that's who they are. And one of the things I'm going to tell you about St. James people is that they are very independent people, but they do need there are lots of areas of neglect, and they need some attention being paid to a lot of the areas. Building houses and just giving a person a home, the area is still so junky. You can't get in sometime. The roads are they're not very accessible. These are things that you have to look into and make that difference. It's not just about giving a house. It's about just making sure that the areas people are comfortable in the homes that you're given.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks for coming, Janice. Thanks for coming on my program, and I really look forward to having some more interviews with you. Not because you're an NRP representative, but because you're a woman who have taken make that decision that you want to be in politics. It's not a place where women would find themselves, because we've been sidelined and pushed in the back and think that it's not a field or a game or a sport that you should be in. And but I think, like I said before, listening to you, I feel comfortable. I feel Nevis is finally looking in the directions that they should be looking into. And I'm hoping that St. Kitts should start doing the same thing. Because when you look at St. Kitts politics, you have one minister that is a female. And it's always been that. Give them one and make them happy. It's always one. And I like the fact that you all would have decided to take all of them on board and see where we can go with that one.
Absolutely. All right, well, thank you for having me, and I'm hoping that everybody would tune in to the launch. And, you know, it's a two-way street. I would give ideas, and I'm always open to receive comments as to, you know, how an idea may be improved or even, added upon. And so it's always interesting when you can hear the perspectives of other persons. And when you thought you had a great idea, it might actually be, a real masterpiece at the end when you take everybody else's position on board. So thanks again for having me, and I look forward to coming back another time.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, and I definitely would tap into you again, because I want to see how you're progressing and what we can do for Nevis people, for St. James people. I'm a St. James, I told you, and I definitely would be interested in trying to see how I can work with anybody to see how we can help the St. James people. Not interested in politics like that, though. I don't want to be a politician. I just want to make sure that I can assist politicians to make sure that the electorates are benefiting in the end. They're the ones who voted for you. They're the ones who put you in the position. So I do hope that later on that you'll be grateful and start looking after them, because that's what happens. We put you there and then we are neglected. It's gratitude from us.
That's my purpose for going in. So I don't think that I would go too far off track. Going in to help and to alleviate some of the struggles, and so that's my focus, and everything that I do is towards that. So.
Okay, we would have lost her, but we would have been out of time too. I think that was an indication that we are out of time, and I think that's where we're gonna go. But it's all good. I am infringing again, as usual. I always infringe on people's time, but I don't think they don't have any problem with this one. So it's just about that time. It's time for me to wrap up. It was a beautiful program that I would have had. It was the information I garnered from it was good for me. I really enjoyed doing that one. And I would remind you, though, that it is Friday. It's a day where some people get paid. Some people want to just relax and just go to a bar and get rid of some of the stress that they would have experienced. But we have to always remember that we are in a pandemic. We are still on the curfew. We are still on the state of emergency, and we have a part to play ourselves in order to curb and control the spread of COVID-19. The part is we have to remember that there are protocols that are set. Social distancing is a must. The wearing of masks comes with a fine if you're not doing so, so it's mandatory. Hand sanitizing, for me, it is very, very, very necessary. You walk around the viruses now, and it will tell you how long it lives on surfaces. So you can put your hands there, you go home, and then you touch your face. And we have a tendency of doing that, and we can contract the virus. So we have to make sure that these protocols that are put in place is because the science understood that these are things that would help you to control the spread. So let's believe in what the science would have said and do what they would have said. Make sure that we adhere to protocols. Although we are having good times, we have to remember that we are not living in normal times. My name is Sandra Quiliatis, and it was a pleasure being here. Stay tuned to WIN FM 98.9. Voices is up next.